Well, thank you very much, Ajahn Prabhu, for that wonderful introduction. And almost as long as the introduction I get in India, which really can go on, actually. Very nice to be here in Ipswich. Thank you for inviting me. My heart will always be with the Ipswich Centre to some extent, because I spent so many crucial years of my life in the town. So I'm very, very fond of it. And I'm also very pleased to know that the Ipswich Sangha is growing and developing and going deeper in the way that it is, which is what I always wanted. So I'm very, very pleased about that. So it's a long time since I gave a talk in Ipswich. I think you invited me on the 25th anniversary of the centre, and I came for that. It's been a long time. Well, as many of you know, I spend quite a lot of time in India. I go there every year, and I've been doing that for 18 years, practicing, teaching, leading retreats, all sorts of programs and talks and events that I'm involved in the Indian Sangha. And, you know, more recently I've been involved in trying to develop a new centre in Calcutta in West Bengal. So that's my latest project. But when I'm in India, I always try and make a bit of time to try and go on pilgrimage to Bodh Gaya or one of the other Buddhist holy sites. Even if it's just for a couple of days, if I could fit it into my schedule, I always try and make a point going there because it's a very, very inspiring place. And often unexpected things happen when you're at Bodh Gaya or Saranath or Shravasti or one of these other places. So I was there, I was in India in January 2020, just before the COVID thing kicked off. I managed to do a month in India working there. And I only had 24 hours with which to visit Bodh Gaya. I was with two friends, and one of them had never been to Bodh Gaya before. I've been many times. He said, well, can we go to Bodh Gaya? Could we? We only had 24 hours. So we went. And as it turned out, it was the full moon on the exact time that we were there, which was a wonderful thing. So we spent time at the site, meditating, performing puja, and finally circumambulating around the inner Mahabodhi temple in the evening. Quite wonderful. I must admit, I wasn't actually that keen to go. We'd just come from, I'd just come from a very busy time in Pune city, where I'd been leading retreats and lots of activity. I was already quite tired, and I would have been quite happy to spend the evening in the hotel reading. But my friends wanted to go, so I went, and I'm really glad I did. There was probably about 1,500 to 2,000 people at the site around the temple that evening, and it was the full moon. Every possible tradition that you could think of was there. There was red robes, yellow robes, white robes, black robes. People were meditating, chanting, circumambulating, prostrating. Thigh bone trumpets were being blown, cymbals were clashing, and a thick, heavy fragrance of 1,000 incense sticks were wafting across. The full moon was out. 1,000 little candle lights were there around the temple. It was a wonderful, absolutely wonderful atmosphere. Towards the end of the evening, I was walking barefoot around the massive Mahabodhi temple with the huge big temple to my right shoulder, just silently circumambulating amongst all these thousands of people. And something very strange happened, which I didn't expect at all. I suddenly found myself completely out of time and space, and I mean completely. I was just a man walking, circumambulating around a spot, the very spot where my master, the Buddha, gained enlightenment. I don't know how long I was in this sort of state, really, but it just went on and on and on and on. It was very unexpected. And, well, I had a plane to catch 10 hours later, but there I was, just in completely out of time and space. And I don't know how long I stayed there in that state, but my friends indicated to me that the temple guards were wanting to lock the temple up and it was time to go. So I left and we went back to the hotel and went to sleep. Looking back, I have experienced that sort of thing before, sometimes on retreats, sometimes at holy sites, but never before in such a kind of sustained way. I was obviously in one of what we call the dhyanas, the dhyana states, the states of absorption, but I hadn't expected this at all. I'd been, as I say, quite tired beforehand, but after I came out of that state, I wasn't tired at all. So Buddh Gaya had weaved its magic upon me. The combination of the place itself, the moonlight, the atmosphere, the wonderful diverse Sangha, and all of us revering the Buddha together in our own way and according to our own tradition. So developing the Sangha through the revering the Buddha. That's what we did. That's what was going on. And no doubt many of us present there felt exactly as I did. We felt deeply in connection with the Buddha, and we felt deeply in connection with each other. So I'm very grateful for that extraordinary experience, but not everyone can go on pilgrimage to Buddh Gaya, COVID times or otherwise. Not everyone can go there. Not everyone wants to go to Buddh Gaya, quite frankly, because India is, you know, in a way quite a mad place, and not everybody fancies doing that. But there's no doubt in my mind that the act of revering the Buddha, individually and collectively, builds and develops Sangha wherever one does that. So the question arises, how can we do that effectively at our home centre, our local place of collective practice? How can we revere the Buddha and in so doing build the Sangha? Because I think we do that very effectively within Sri Ratna. So my answer to this is threefold, really, how we can do that. Listening, reflecting, and meditating. Listening to the Buddha, reflecting on the Buddha, and meditating on the Buddha. So I'm going to explore that a little bit throughout the rest of the talk. You might already be familiar with this teaching, sometimes called the 3 levels of wisdom. It dates back to the Buddha himself in the Pali Canon. Suttamaya Pranya, Chintamaya Pranya, Bhavanamaya Pranya. It's also referred to as listening, reflecting, and meditating is also referred to by Padmasambhava in the root verses of the 6 bardos in the Bardo Tadol, or what we call in the West, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I'm going to be using this teaching in a slightly different way tonight from how it's usually used. I'm going to be using a poetic interpretation to put across what is quite a down-to-earth set of practices. So stay with me, we'll get there. So for any Sangha to deepen, broaden, and to develop, whether it's a regional Sangha or it's a larger Sangha, for any Sangha to do that, it needs one thing. It needs an authentic spiritual core. An authentic spiritual core. An authentic spiritual core goes beyond group dynamics, social divisions, issues of race and class, and all those sort of things that groups tend to get caught up in. An authentic spiritual core goes beyond that. And listening, reflecting, and meditating will give any Sangha that authentic spiritual core. When spiritual cores are established, the Sangha draws people into it and it keeps them there. If you've got that core, people will somehow be drawn to it and they'll want to stay and be part of that. So let's have a look at what I mean by listening. And don't forget, we're talking about this in a poetic way, yeah? And I think what this really means is taking in deeply who the Buddha really is. Taking in deeply who the Buddha really is. So that our reverence and appreciation for the Buddha goes deeper. It can literally mean listening. Listening to accounts, stories of the life of the Buddha, hearing all about him. It could mean reading scriptures and about what kind of man Gautama Buddha really was. It can be getting input on the Buddha whilst on retreat, attending courses at the centre, talking to order members and mitras and friends and study groups. Well, it means delving into the founder of our faith, knowing his life, knowing his core teaching, knowing what his teaching really is, rather than what we think it is. I'd like to put in a recommendation here for Vishvapani's book, Gautama Buddha. It really is the best thing I've ever read on the Buddha. I've got it on an audible file, and this year I've listened to it 4 times through the complete book. It really is quite wonderful. You really don't need anything else. But yes, where was I? Getting to know his teachings and what his teachings really are rather than what we think they are. Sometimes getting to know the Buddha's teaching can even threaten things which our lives are based upon, which can be very uncomfortable. I remember when I worked in advertising, this is before I worked for BT, all those years ago, I worked in advertising in my 20s at the start of my career. And when I really reflected on the Buddha's teaching and went deeper into the Buddha's teaching, I came across the whole teaching about craving and stimulating craving. And I felt inevitably that I had to change my job because advertising is all about persuading people to buy things that they don't need or they don't want. And I kind of realized it was quite inconvenient at the time, but I had to change my career. And that's sometimes what happens if we go deeply into the Buddha's teaching. Sometimes it's not just all about inspiration, though there'll be plenty of that. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable and we need to change our lives a little bit. So all this listening, all this delving into the life of Gautama Buddha is an active process. You need to put effort into it. And of course, other people in the Sangha are also putting effort into it. And that really pays off. And the outcome is that it creates Sangha. Active delving creates Sangha. Sangha is a free association of like-minded people. And that like-mindedness is based on the act of going for refuge to the 3 jewels. And this creates a deep spiritual core, which is very attractive. So let's have a look at reflecting. What does that mean? And this means turning over the teachings of the Buddha in your mind. Reflecting on whatever it is, the threefold way, the eightfold path, the 5 precepts, whatever particular formulation or teaching it is. Are they true? Are these teachings true? Do I agree with them? Do I resonate with them? Am I drawn to them? Do I really live by these teachings? Do I really, or do I just say I do? So that's the kind of thing that we can reflect upon. All our core Buddhist teachings come from Shakyamuni Buddha. If we revere his teachings, we revere him. A good example of this for me is the Upajjhatana Sutta, which is a very short and very pithy sutta from Anguttara Nikaya. That's the numerical sections of the Pali Canon. So I'll read it out to you. It's so short, you can read it out to you. But just sort of notice your response to when you hear the words. You might think, oh no, not that again. but just listen and take in what I'm saying. 5 contemplations for everyone. I am sure to become old. I cannot avoid aging. I am sure to become ill. I cannot avoid illness. I am sure to die. I cannot avoid death. I must be separated from all that is dear and beloved to me. I am the owner of my actions, heir of my actions. Actions are the womb from which I have sprung. Actions are my relations. Actions are my protection. Whatever actions I do, good or bad, of these I shall become heir. So that's the Upajjhatana Sutta. Very pithy, very short, but really, really deep. And you can spend the rest of your life reflecting on that and seeing how that affects you and affects your life. So there's so much there that gets our attention. And if we can face the teaching, and if we approach the sutta in the right way, there's so much to motivate and inspire us there in the teaching. So when we reflect in this way, we actually build Sangha. What happens is that each of us, if each of us does this, we individually have something to offer the Sangha. We have reflected on the Buddha's teachings ourselves as individuals, and it's gone in deep. And we are convinced of it for ourselves. We don't need to be persuaded of the Buddha's teaching like some kind of advertising person might do. We're convinced of the teachings for ourselves. And we reflect for ourselves and we share these teachings with each other. We augment our understanding of the teachings amongst the Sangha. And we do this with metta. Metta being the lifeblood of the Sangha. And once again, this develops a deeper spiritual core. So yes, I first got involved in Buddhism when I was 14. And 3 things happened. I went on a school trip to the British Museum and I saw a huge, enormous 30-foot high statue of the Buddha in the British Museum. That was a very, very big experience for me. There I was in my school uniform and I had a very strong experience. And I watched a series on television called Kung Fu, which is all about a Buddhist monk in the Wild West. Had a very, very strong effect upon me. And yes, my father got a job at a Buddhist monastery. All these things happened within 3 months. And very, very strong effect. And I remember when I first got to know the monks in the Buddhist monastery, and we were reflecting and talking about the Dharma together. I remember what a wonderful experience it was for me because they understood what I was experiencing, the faith that I was experiencing. No one else around me, my friends, my parents, nobody else could understand why I was interested in this weird and wacky thing. But they did. So reflecting really creates Sangha. So finally we've got meditating. And this essentially involves mindfulness of breathing meditation and metabhavana meditation. Having everyone within the Sangha meditating is an essential thing for the growth of the Sangha. So we all do it. It's possible for people to be part of the Sangha and not meditate, but generally speaking, we need most people to be doing that. It's an essential practice, and the Sangha grows from our collective practice of meditation. These practices that we do, that we've just done this evening, one of them we just done this evening, they actually originate with the Buddha, from the Buddha. He taught them for us to use. So when we do these practices, we are actually carrying out the teaching and the practices and the example of the Buddha. He taught them. So there's an opportunity there for reverence. We can reflect on that when we do the practice. It's a wonderful thing. I try to do that before or after a meditation. You just think, I'm about to do something which was taught and recommended by the Buddha himself. We can also do something called Buddhanusati, which is something anyone can do. It's a wonderful practice, a recollection of the Buddha. And this particularly goes very well with ritual and devotion, with puja. Another fantastic practice, which builds Sangha. So we can do a form of meditation where we actually see or imagine the Buddha in our mind. We can hear his voice. We can see him teaching his disciples. We can see him sitting under the Bodhi tree. We could see him meditating in the forest or walking around northern India with his disciples. So sometimes when we meditate, we completely forget about the Buddha and his teaching, become so absorbed in ourselves and what we're doing that we forget all about the provenance of the practice. So try and remember the Buddha sometimes when you meditate, that it is actually emanating from the Buddha, it's connected with him. Because everything that we do comes from the Buddha. He built the Sangha in his lifetime, and historians and scholars believe that he had tens of thousands of men and women disciples in his lifetime, tens of thousands. And India was a lot less populated than what it is now. It's still a remarkable achievement. How did one man do that? Well, he did that through the depth of his insight and his practice, and through his teaching. It really had something to offer people, from kings and queens right through to ordinary people of the day. He could completely transform their lives. They saw that, they embraced it, and they spread it to others. So the Buddha was truly a unique spiritual leader. And his Sangha extends to us here today. It's now perhaps, the Sangha now in the world is perhaps the largest it has ever been. It is estimated that 520 million people in the world are Buddhists. But it's not the largest that it could be. It was the belief of our teacher, Bhante Sangharakshita, and also his friend, the great Indian Buddhist teacher, Dr. Ambedkar. It was their belief that if more people in the world heard about the Dharma and they had access to it, then they would embrace it. That was their belief. I can remember when Ipswich didn't have a Triratna Buddhist Centre, but today, thanks to all the central folk through the decades that have been involved in the Ipswich Centre and have built Sangha, you have a very beautiful Sangha, a very alive Sangha, and with many, many people, appreciative people accessing it. So what a wonderful thing that is. And sadhu, I say to that. I'm so happy about it. So finally, now I'm not 14 anymore, I'm 62. And my current project between now and when I die is to establish a Triratna Centre, or a number of Triratna Centres in the Indian West Bengali city of Calcutta. It's a city of 15 million people, and it's the world's most densely packed city per square mile. It has 102,000 people per square mile, whereas New York has 27,000 people. It really, really feels like that when you're there as well. It has tremendous potential. There are so many people there who would love to learn the Dharma. They would love the Triratna approach. So myself and a group of Indian order members and Mitras have formed, and we've already run a couple of retreats. We're starting to do weekly meditation classes. I'm doing lots of online teaching, and with visits. And well, what we want to do is get some money together and actually build a centre and man it with full-time order members. So in July this year, I shall cycle from Land's End to John O'Groats to raise money. It's about 1,200 miles. I've been in training for about a year now, and I'm doing 20 miles a day every day. And so yes, I'm going to cycle from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I plan to raise £20,000, and that will really move the project on substantially. It will pay for somebody to go and live there, an board member and his wife to go and live there. So yeah, if you would like to donate to that, there is a GoFundMe website where any donation, small or large, from £1 to millions of pounds that you'd like to give us, you can visit the website, and please do that. We will do this. We will start this centre and develop this Buddhist centre, and we'll create a Sangha there, and we'll achieve this by revering the Buddha. Thank you.